everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video we are continuing with some Easter cards, and again these are cards that I'm going to mass produce. We'll make 6 cards today. I've done a lot of prep work already off screen, but one of the things we're going to be doing today is we're going to be doing some die cutting, some heat embossing, and just making a really pretty card for Easter. So what I showed you there is VERSAMARK and some Princess Gold embossing powder from Ranger. That's a really pretty gold. We're going to be using this swag kind of stamp set here from Simon Says Stamp. This is Garden Greetings. We're going to be using this Kaleidescope cross from Spellbinders. This has a detail layer and a I guess you could call it like a shadow layer. All I'm going to be using today is the bigger layer, the shadow layer. I will use the detail layer on kind of the center medallion. I'm also going to be using the Simon Says Stamp Happy Easter. I'm going to be using the Happy Easter sentiment from that set. What I did is I went ahead and cut that cross out off screen just to save a little bit of time. I did that with some scrap cardstock from my stash. I'm going to use some liquid glue just to tack that crossbar in place. And then I'm going to glue the medallion down also. Like I said, I'm using the bigger layers today. There are more detailed layers for the cross itself. The only time I'm using the detail layer is right here for this kind of center medallion to cover up where the two sections of the cross meet. And I'm going to actually pop this part up with a little bit of foam tape. This foam tape comes from Dollar Tree. I just cut it down a little bit, and this gives this card a little bit more interest, a little bit more dimension, without adding a whole bunch of bulk all over the card. As this is going to be cards that I'm donating, they will more than likely be mailed, and I don't want to have it cost more to ship, to mail out. So I'm trying to rein in the dimension. So I'm going to tack that down in place, and then this cross is done. It's very easy to put together, and it's actually a really pretty. I've had this in my stash for quite some time. I don't know if it's still available, but you can find plenty of crosses in lots of places, lots of stamp sets or die sets. You can even make one with your Cricut or electronic cutting machine if you have one of those. We're going to move on to the embossing. I'm using my waffle flower grip mat to tack this A2 size card panel in place. I'm going to use my anti-static tool just to make sure that this embossing powder sticks where I want it to. I'm going to use a little brush to kind of spread that around. This helps cut down on static so that when you actually emboss, you have a nice crisp, clean image without stray embossing flakes everywhere. I've already kind of planned out where I want these to go. I made a bunch of these off screen already, well, 5 of them off screen already. So I knew kind of where I wanted things to go and how they were going to be arranged on the card itself. So I'm going to stamp these twice just because I feel like that gives me a better impression. The floral swag there is pretty detailed, has a lot of fine lines, so I want to make sure that I get that inked up really well. And then I'm using my little Stampin' Bug pressure tool just to save my hand a little bit. I'm going to stamp that twice, and then I'm just going to pull in a piece of scrap paper and sprinkle on my embossing powder. Any embossing powder that's left over, which is obviously tons, I can just use that same paper to funnel that back into the jar. I do have my embossing gun nice and hot already. I already stamped and heat embossed the other 5 of the card fronts that we're making today. I already heat set those, and so my gun is already nice and hot. I'm going to tap off the excess, and if I see any spots where there's some flakes where I don't want it, I'm just going to either blow them off or use my scissors or some sort of pokey tool just to kind of scrape them off. But I was pretty good here. One of the things I have noticed with this embossing powder is that it doesn't leave like necessarily like embossing flakes, but it almost leaves like a gold sheen. I can't really describe it, but it almost leaves like a gold sheen on things instead of like embossing flakes. So here, which I mean, I think it's pretty, So it doesn't bother me, but that's something that I've noticed with this embossing powder. I've never seen that in any of the other embossing powders I have in my stash. Here I'm going to go ahead and heat set these when it is shiny and no longer grainy and dull looking. It is finished. I have discovered that if I heat from behind instead of actually facing the, putting my heat gun directly on the powder, I get smoother results with my heat embossing. I don't know if that's just me. I have a tendency to get really, really close to my paper. I don't know why, but I do. And so I think maybe heating from behind helps me keep from blowing off a lot of my embossing powder. Maybe that's why I get better results. Not entirely sure. I'm going to go ahead and trim these down. Like I said, they are 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So they're a regular A2 size card front panel. And I just want a little bit of white showing on my card base. So I'm going to trim off 1/4 of an inch from that left side and 1/4 inch from the top on all of these panels. I think my trimmer blade is getting dull, and so there's a lot of like just excess paper kind of sticking off the sides of my card front, and I'll show you how I get rid of that in a minute. I did have some of my embossing anti-static powder tool still sitting on the card front, so I took a Swiffer cloth and just brushed that off, and it came off no problem. Here I have a sanding block. I purchased these off of Amazon eons ago, and I'm just using that to kind of rub along the sides of the card just to get some of those like stray hairs off and kind of clean that up a little bit, and that worked beautifully. I am going to glue these down flat. If I were going to be hand delivering these or paying my own shipping, I would probably add a little bit of dimension back here. This is all Paper Studio cardstock, except for a couple of them, and I think, I'm not entirely sure where some of these came from, but most of these are Paper Studio cardstock, so it's of a thinner weight, and so those in particular warped quite a bit, and adding either foam or foam tape or extra just scrap cardstock behind will help kind of alleviate some of that warping and help things flatten. To make sure I get good adherence, I'm going to add the liquid glue to the back and then set my MISTI on top. That will just help things make sure that we're getting good contact while this glue sets. We're in the home stretch now. I'm just going to add little dots of glue along some of the thicker sides and down kind of the middle sections of these crosses just to adhere them down. If you have like a sticker maker or spray adhesive that you like, or even the dot sheets from Simon, those would be a good use right here. I just chose to use my liquid glue because I wasn't entirely sure where I was going to place these crosses. I have it here, and then I'm like, nah, it needs to be down further. It looks kind of funny there. So I did smear a little bit of liquid glue, but you can't really tell because I brushed it off pretty quick. So when I was pleased with where things were, I just went through and attached all the crosses to every single one of those cards. And then we need to have a little bit of extra shine. So I went through my stash and I found some sequins, some white, kind of almost pearlescent sequins, and I just put 3 of them, kind of framing the sentiment a little bit. I did have some kind of trailing off over here. I didn't really like how that looked, and I kind of felt like simpler was better. One of the things I discovered was it was a lot easier and quicker for me just to place the glue dots, this little dots of glue down first, and then pick up the sequins and place them in it. That really sped things along and made things go a lot faster. So just a little pro tip for you if you're trying to make things in bulk and want to pick up the pace. So these cards are almost done. Some of them I have the cross kind of hanging over just a hair, and so I went through and just snipped that off with a pair of scissors from the back and cleaned that edge up. If you were going to put these in a larger envelope, you wouldn't necessarily have to do this, but these are going to go in a regular A2 size envelope, so I wanted to make sure that I snipped all that off. So these are the cards complete. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you feel inspired to make some Easter cards for someone that you know this Easter. Thank you so much for spending time with me. I appreciate you, and we will see you next time. Bye.